time, and then again at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time if you missed the first showing, twice a night, Monday through Friday. We're on the Stakelbeck Tonight set right now in Dallas-Fort Worth. Hananya and Yair join me. Number one, two reasons. The genocide charges, those bogus claims against Israel. Hananya and I broke that down, and I start with a monologue throwing out some very important numbers, folks, that you need to know about as you stand with Israel. Number two, Yair takes us to a shooting range in Israel outside of Jerusalem and shares why some 300,000 Israelis have applied for gun permits since October 7th alone. First, let's go to my opening monologue from the Stakelbeck Tonight show about those genocide accusations and the real numbers about how the Palestinian population has not decreased as a result of a supposed genocide, but has increased dramatically over the past several decades and continues to grow. This is a sneak peek at the Stakelbeck Tonight show. Take a look. Did you hear that Israel is carrying out a modern-day Holocaust against Palestinians? Apparently, as Israel continues its push to crush Hamas terrorists in Gaza, the world's one and only Jewish state is actually committing war crimes reminiscent of the Nazis. Or at least that's the growing narrative in media outlets, protest marches, and diplomatic declarations across the world, including right here in the West. Folks, if you thought this kind of unhinged rhetoric was reserved for our college campus fever swamps, think again. Take a look at this.
6 months of unrelenting Israeli assault on occupied Gaza. It is my solemn duty to report on the worst of what humanity is capable of, and to present my finding. The dehumanization of Palestinians as a group is the hallmark of their history of ethnic cleansing, dispossession, and apartheid. I find that there are reasonable grounds to believe that the threshold indicating the commission of the crime of genocide against Palestinians as a group in Gaza has been met.
Now that's a UN official. Even President Biden got in on the act during his State of the Union speech last month, and while he didn't talk about genocide, he provided some very misleading numbers. Take a look.
This war has taken a greater toll on innocent civilians than all previous wars in Gaza combined. More than 30,000 Palestinians have been killed.
Now, here's the problem with that. Those numbers that the president used were provided by the Gaza Ministry of Health, which is run by Hamas. So those are Hamas's numbers. Call me crazy, but there's a pretty good chance that Hamas, a vicious terrorist organization, would inflate those numbers to garner world sympathy and increase calls for a ceasefire that would leave Hamas alive to fight another day. Basically, it would snatch defeat from the jaws of a coming Israeli victory. And sadly, that's what much of the world seems to want. By the way, of that 30,000 plus dead number that the president cited, which is, again, almost certainly inaccurate, at least 12,000 of the dead are Hamas terrorists. Now, he didn't mention that very important point, but Israel has confirmed that number. There's also an untold number of Palestinian civilians who've been killed because Hamas uses them as human shields, or because Hamas rockets misfired and fell inside Gaza. Here's another number worth mentioning. If Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians, a systematic ethnic cleansing that seeks to eliminate an entire people, then how does the Palestinian population continue to grow dramatically? The State of Israel was reborn in 1948, and that's when the genocide supposedly began. But folks, just look at these numbers. In 1955, there were roughly 1 million Palestinians living in Gaza and the West Bank, or Judea and Samaria. By the year 2000, that number had grown to over 3.1 million. And today, when the Israeli genocide is supposedly at its height, the Palestinian population stands at nearly 5.5 million people. So what we have here is the only genocide in world history where the affected population is actually growing a lot. yet much of the world chooses to swallow the lie. Joining us now from Israel to break this down is Hananya Naftali. He works with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's digital team and is a foremost advocate for Israel on the world stage with over 2 million followers on social media. Hananya, welcome. Hey, I want to start with a clip.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. Let's look at a clip here. I want you to take a listen. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC for short, recently gave a very interesting speech on the House floor. Hananya, take a look and give this a listen.
This is a mass starvation of people, engineered and orchestrated, following the killing of another 30,000, 70% of whom were women and children killed. There is hardly a single hospital left. And this was all accomplished, much of this accomplished, with U.S. resources and weapons. If you want to know what an unfolding genocide looks like, open your eyes.
Hananya, you've served in the Israel Defense Forces. You've written about, you've talked about on your YouTube channel and elsewhere, the extraordinary lengths that the IDF goes to avoid civilian casualties. How do you respond when you hear comments like that from a member of the U.S. Congress?
Well, I would advise her to come to Israel and bear witness to the reality, to bear witness to what Hamas perpetrated on October 7th, how it systematically massacred civilians. I was deployed in the Gaza Strip when the war began, and I was a combat medic. We were strictly instructed to only target Hamas terrorists, to not target Palestinian civilians. On the contrary, during my military service, most of the patients that I've treated were Palestinians or Syrians. So it's just ridiculous to come with accusations to the one army that cares for Palestinians, the one country that cares for Palestinians more than Hamas will ever care for them. We're talking about thousands of Palestinians entering into Israel to work from the Gaza Strip, a total of 100,000 working in Israel prior to the war. I saw hospitals filled with Palestinian patients from Gaza, from Judea and Samaria, receiving life-saving treatments from Israeli, Jewish, and Arab doctors. So all of that came to a pause because Hamas decided to wage a genocidal war and try to erase as much of the Jewish state as it can. As Erick, it says on their charter that in the 1988 charter that they want to establish an Islamic state on top of Israel. So it's very clear why they did that, and it's very clear why they say that they will do it again and again and again.
Yeah, Hananya, great point about Hamas's founding charter. This organization was founded, it exists for the sole purpose of destroying Israel. So irresponsible rhetoric there on Capitol Hill, to say the least, and elsewhere in the international mainstream media. But thank God we have you setting the record straight. Speaking of which, hey, we had the tragic deaths, accidental deaths of 7 international aid workers in Gaza earlier this week. Israel has apologized repeatedly and said this was a horrible mistake in the fog of war, but Israel's critics are really keying on this. What can you tell us?
Well, first of all, it's a tragic event. War is ugly. Nobody likes war. Nobody wants war here in Israel. I was in the army. We surely did not want to be in the Gaza Strip. We would much rather be with our families, but we understand that we have to fight not to defend our borders, but to defend our families. Because on October 7th, they ran straight to homes to murder babies, children, mothers. So you don't see Israelis celebrating this event. You don't see them handing out candies in the streets, just like Palestinians handing out candies on 9/11. You don't see Israelis celebrate death like Palestinians celebrate death whenever terror attacks occur in Israel. We sanctify life and we celebrate peace. But unfortunately, we live next to radicals that sanctify death and celebrate terror. So we cannot allow such a thing to exist right next to us. And of course, I'm talking about Hamas, because I have to say, Erick, some people say to me that Hamas, what they did to Israel is like animals. But I think that actually comparing them to animals is an insult to God's perfect creation, because animals, they hunt for survival.
That's true.
And these Hamas savages, they butchered people, filmed it, videotaped it, called their parents.
We got to leave it there,
celebrated.
Hananya.
So
more coming up after the break with Hananya Naftali. Don't move. Welcome back to Stakelbeck tonight. We're talking to our good friend Hananya Naftali, joining us from Tel Aviv, one of the foremost advocates for Israel in social media around the world. Hananya, I have to ask you, you do such great work in, I would say, bringing people together in other countries, places like India. I've seen you on the ground and forging great relationships between Israel and the rest of the world, and of course with evangelical Christians here in the U.S. and around the world too. Talk about the hypocrisy that we see. There's outrage when Israel makes a mistake, but when, say, the Iranian regime pretty much triggers a war in the region, we don't hear too much about that.
exactly. And I have to say, I think Hamas excels at flipping and distorting facts as they are, because Iran is actually the one that's sponsoring this war. Hamas is trying to push the idea that Israel is pushing all this war, global war, World War III, talking about the red heifers that we all hear about. So it's just ridiculous. Also, the Free Palestine movement that we hear people chanting and protesting, freeing Palestine. Freeing Palestine from what exactly? That's the question of us Israelis, because if Israel occupies Palestine, then when was this state established? What was their currency? Who was the Palestinian king? I'd like to meet him, because I know about a King David. So it's what actually inspired me to start and forge alliances and friendships with friends of Israel around the world, because I want us to be not a silent majority, but a vocal majority, because we live in such a time where it's either there's no middle ground. It's light or darkness. This is what this war is about, evil or good. You have to know where you stand. And standing with Israel is, quite frankly, standing for the future of America, because these Hamas savages, they will not stop there. You can't limit this ideology to a border, and therefore Israel has to dismantle Hamas and this idea of Hamas.
Hananya, there are really no gray areas here. You make a great point. By the way, you said earlier, and you reminded everyone, Hamas invaded southern Israel on October 7th. It wasn't the other way around. Israel is responding to a horrific invasion that saw 1,200 Jews massacred. So when you hear these charges of genocide, as a Jew, as an Israeli who has served in the Israel Defense Forces, and even comparisons to the Nazis and the Holocaust, I would imagine this is particularly upsetting and problematic for you.
Absolutely, Eric. I think that this war actually revealed all the hypocrites and those with double standards. Because let the viewers hear that actually on October 7, Hamas terrorists massacred Ethiopian Israelis. Hamas terrorists raped Israeli women. I didn't hear the Black Lives Matter movement issuing a statement about that. I didn't see immediate condemnation when Israeli women were raped. We had to explain ourselves to the world. And the only reason is because that very word called Israel. Look, there is famine right now in Sudan. There is civil war in Yemen. There's famine in Yemen as well. People are suffering. Christians are persecuted in Nigeria. I wish that they would receive the same attention that Israel is receiving on the global arena. Because it's just ridiculous. I have to say, no country is perfect. But I also would like to ask, show me one country that is perfect. The fact that Israel is being placed under the microscope, this is a problem, because Israel is actually not the problem. Israel is the solution. Israel is doing the world a favor by dismantling Hamas. And what we see right now with Iran, it's also a big threat that is coming.
Yeah. Hananya, we've got about 20 seconds left. For everyone watching at home, why is Israel such a special place for everyone? The most diverse country, I believe, in the world. Jerusalem, most diverse, welcoming city. Just in a few seconds, just a welcome to everyone, I guess you would say, around the world to Israel.
Thank you so much for the love and support for Israel. We need our friends today more than ever.
Thank you so much, Hanania Naftali. Hey, keep up the great work, my friend. We'll have you back soon. God bless. Folks, be sure to follow Hanania across social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube. He's everywhere, and he's doing a great job for such a time as this. Well, coming up after the break, another guy who's doing a great job is our TBN Israel correspondent, Yair Pinto, who'll join us from Jerusalem with a very important report. That's next. Welcome back. As crime and lawlessness rise here in the United States, more and more Americans are purchasing guns for self-defense and to protect their families. Unlike the U.S., Israel does not have a Second Amendment, but in the aftermath of the Hamas massacre on October 7th, everything's changed. Our TBN Israel correspondent Yair Pinto has more.
Since the age of 18, when I was recruited to serve in the IDF, I've been trained to operate a weapon. From today, I will start to carry a personal firearm in my daily life, something that until October 7th, I didn't feel the need for. Israel has always faced significant security threats, especially from terrorist organizations. Historical reality demonstrates to us that terrorist organizations attack Israeli citizens in everyday places whenever they have an opportunity. After October 7th, something in every citizen's sense of security was damaged, no matter where they live in this country. If there was such a security failure in the communities adjacent to the Gaza Strip, it could happen anywhere, that these threats require a strong security mechanism. This must include armed citizens who can support the security forces in an unexpected event. The presence of armed citizens has proven to be a deterrent against potential attacks and provides an additional layer of security. Another decisive factor that contributes to encouraging the carrying of weapons by citizens in Israel is mandatory military service for both men and women. At the beginning of the military service, every soldier undergoes training ranging from Rifleman 02 to Rifleman 12. This military service instills in the population a sense of responsibility, discipline, and familiarity with weapons. Until today, I didn't feel the need to carry a weapon every day. But the events of October 7th changed all of that, and not just for me. 300,000 Israelis have applied to acquire a firearm since October 7th. This is 7 times more than applied in all of 2023 combined, meaning that between 8,000 and 10,000 new applications for the issuance of a license are submitted to the police every day. It is important to know it is not a free-for-all policy. The government maintains strict regulations to ensure that only responsible individuals are permitted to carry firearms. In Israel, owning a personal firearm and ammunition is not a right, but a privilege. Those who wish to acquire them must first acquire a license from the Israeli Ministry of Internal Security. The licensing process is strict and includes thorough background checks, mental health assessments, and practical training. One cannot simply walk into a store and buy a firearm or ammunition. To sum up, owning a gun in Israel is a big responsibility. It is not only about the right to protect yourself and your family, it is about respecting the power of the weapon and the potential damage it could cause if misused.
And Yair joins us now from our TBN Jerusalem studio. Hey, Yair, number one, you look pretty handy with that pistol. I wouldn't expect anything less from a veteran of the Israel Defense Forces. But number two, I think you laid out 300,000 Israelis have applied for permits since October 7th. It seems that day, Yair, understandably changed Israeli society forever?
Yeah, definitely, Eric. First of all, you need to look at my wife when she's shooting the gun. I mean, she's a sharpshooter, way better than me. But going back to the 7th of October, man, everything changed. Just imagine the situation. We wake up in our house on a Saturday morning, on a Simchat Torah high holiday of the Jewish people, and we see all these videos that you see now of Hamas terrorists inside Israeli communities, roaming free, attacking, murdering, firing, killing people. And then a few hours later, I get a call. It's time to go to the IDF, to your reserve duty unit. At that time, they called me to be on the border with Lebanon. Just imagine the situation. My wife at home, alone with 3 kids, nothing to defend herself. In Israel, the Palestinian villages are less than 200 meters from our home. So at that moment, we decided we need also a personal firearm to defend ourselves. And we weren't the only ones. Another 300 people, Israelis, also made that decision. So it took us about 3.5 months to get the license and to get the pistols finally. And then what you saw in the video is the aftermath of that.
Yeah, Yair, you're doing great work, hey, and I know the people of Israel feel more secure with you in uniform with the Israel Defense Forces, but we're glad you're here joining us right now in civilian fashion from our Jerusalem studio. Yair Pinto, we'll have you back a bunch here on Stakelbeck tonight. We can't thank you enough, my friend. Stay safe. God bless you, Yair. We'll see